Like, if someone's beating down my door with a baseball bat, I'm not waiting for the cops.
Yeah.
I'm calling the cops, but I'm not waiting for them.
And welcome to the Down in Front podcast, the official podcast of downinfrontpodcast.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. If this is your first episode hanging out with us, we always want to say, starting off our show saying thank you so much for hanging out. What we do here is that we review a bunch of movies, TV shows, sometimes video games, sometimes sports, just a nice hodgepodge of everything, all wrapped up in a nice little bow while having our favorite alcoholic or regular beverages. So tonight we are going to be giving you our full review of Serenity, one of the newest films in theaters for right now, starring Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, and a few other people that we're going to mention later on. But before we get into our review, I'm going to toss it over to a bit of a round table to a couple of my best friends and introduce themselves. I have the mouth of the South, the marvelous Brylan. What's going on, man? What you sipping on? What else have you been watching?
Good evening, everyone out there in podcast land. I am currently sipping on some green tea. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to drink this week, and I'm kind of glad I didn't drink because we're reviewing this movie. So I'm just keeping nice and calm with some green tea right now. But I've been watching a lot of stuff, and my viewing habits have gotten super chaotic, even to the point where I'll be watching half a show and then I'll start watching another show and go back to watch the other half later. And so, but one thing that really did stand out that I watched in its entirety was the finals of the Dragon Ball FighterZ World Tour on Twitch. And this was like the culmination, the championship of championships of the entire year-long Dragon Ball FighterZ tour that they had. And it was pretty neat how they set this up, where they had 7 regional or major events where each champion of those events could win a Dragon Ball. And that Dragon Ball got them automatic entry into the tour finals. Granted, one person won 4 of the Dragon Balls, so there was only 4 slots that were guaranteed. But that led to something really cool, was they set up these last chance qualifiers. And so over this 2-day period, they got to choose the last 4 of the top 8 players to go into the brackets by going through these last chance qualifiers. And there was one player that actually went through every single round of the last chance qualifiers. He won the last qualifier, and then he made his entire way through the losers bracket to the grand finals and almost won the whole thing. But alas, the top player in the world, Kazunoko, he won the whole thing. He's just pretty nasty, but this is a fun game to watch. So if you haven't watched the Dragon Ball FighterZ tournament, it's really cool because the game is just very pretty. They capture those characters really well in their animation and like the different styles of fighting each character does. But overall, it's also fun to watch because there's a lot of cool strategy set up in this game, and the action is really easy to follow. So it was definitely worth watching, definitely fun to check out as well.
Nice. And you said you watched it on Twitch?
I watched it on Twitch. Yeah.
Nice. And that's always pretty cool. Good. Well, as always, it's great to see your face. I know as much as you love this movie, so I'm excited to hear your thoughts on reviewing Serenity. I'll toss it to my other best friend, but not as cool as Brylan, of course. The Shredder. What's going on, man? What you sipping on tonight, and what else have you been watching?
Hey, how's it going? I have tonight, of course, some rum, which I forget the name of it because I looked at the case and that was a half hour ago and it's gone already. I've had this thing sitting in my kitchen for like 6 months, and I figured they were drinking rum the entire time. Might as well finally bust this bottle open. It's okay. I wish I had a little bit of juice to spritz it up a bit, but c'est la vie.
C'est la vie.
Yeah, also the French that they were speaking in this movie for no reason.
That's let's
We'll talk. Yeah, we'll
not
talk.
get
Yeah.
We go into that.
We'll talk. So what I've been watching, ironically enough, nothing like movie wise. I think I've watched something on Netflix recently, but I don't remember. It wasn't The Punisher. What I've been mostly doing is playing either Spider-Man or South Park: The Stick of Truth, which that is basically just a multi hour long episode of South Park, and I've been losing my mind playing that game. It's wicked easy, which is nice. You can kind of just cruise through and enjoy all of the scenery, but that has pretty much been my obsession for the last couple days.
Yeah, Stick of Truth is awesome. I still want to play Fractured Butthole.
Yeah,
I have it. I got to get through Stick of Truth first.
I just hear that all those games are so much fun. So big ups to the people who created those games in South Park. I'm glad those are still very entertaining.
Yeah.
My name is Warren. I will be your host for this evening. I am currently sipping on a classic vodka and cranberry mix. It's quite nice. And what else I've been watching? So I finally got a chance to start The Americans. Have you guys seen the show yet?
No.
I've heard it's good.
It is quite phenomenal. I'm currently on the season 2. Emma got me into the show because she was raving about it, and I think we were watching the Golden Globes, and I want to say maybe Matthew Rice got nominated for something. But the show is absolutely amazing. I think it's maybe 6 or 7 seasons. I'm at season 2. It's a very easy watch. About no spoilers, but go check out the show. Well, is it? Definitely go check the show out. I mean, I feel like it's an easy watch for sure. I started binging it while watching it on the plane when I'm traveling, and it's just very easy. I think that each episode's about 45 minutes to an hour. It is a long season though, because each season is about 12 to 13 episodes, and there's 7. So if you can do the math, that's probably going to take you some time to get through it, but it's very enjoyable. So I definitely would suggest everybody definitely go check out the show. And if you have checked out the show already, I'm sorry that I'm late, but we've been reviewing movies like Replicas, so I haven't had enough time. And with that, I'm going to go and talk about my favorite section where we're going to dedicate a couple of sips to our healthy individuals out there. So, Brylan, who are you dedicating your sip to tonight?
I'm dedicating my sip to the one and the only New England Patriots. May they win their 6th Super Bowl this coming Sunday. So, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, Gronk, Edelman, even Mr. PlayStation himself, Sony Michel. Hope y'all do very well. Bring it home. We need another parade to go down the street.
Blue, who are you dedicating your sip to tonight?
Anthony Davis, please come to the Celtics and change. I know Anthony Davis is listening to this too. Actually, this one should go to the Pelicans front office. We will give you Terry Rozier, and you give us Anthony Davis. How about that?
That's not a fair trade at all.
Yeah,
but
they're getting Rozier. We're only getting Anthony Davis. Send a sip, though. Let's make it happen, Pelicans.
I mean, what's better, Dunkin' Donuts or Cafe Du Monde?
Neither. They're both disgusting.
Oh,
get out of here with your... There's nothing even from Buffalo. Get out of here.
Buffalo coffee can.
Bitch, we got wings. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I do.
There's nothing from Buffalo. How many times you had buffalo wings this year alone?
All the days. It's the only thing I eat.
I like boneless chicken.
That's still okay. I am dedicating my sip to Mackenzie Milton, famous quarterback from UCF. If you're not aware, he actually broke his leg pretty severely to the point where they wasn't entirely sure if he was to be able to walk again. So I think he just kind of completed his 3rd or 4th successful surgery within the last maybe month and a half. So I'm definitely kind of excited. I can care less if this dude even goes back to playing football. I'm just hoping that he at least has a chance to kind of walk again and regain his strength. It'll be great if he does play football, like especially kind of moving on. But he was definitely looked at as being a Heisman candidate a couple years now, and extra tragedy happened. So kudos to you, my friend. I appreciate everybody kind of supporting him. I'm definitely going to give you a big shout out. Hopefully your recovery is going smoothly. So thanks so much for what you do. And I appreciate it. And with that, we have hit our favorite section, our spoiler section. So we are going to be getting ready to talk about this movie, Serenity. If you haven't seen it already, we want to tell you this is where we're going to be spoiling it. So if you don't really care too much about spoilers, we'll say go and press on. We're going to take a bit of a break. And when we come back, we will stay tuned for a full review spoiler edition of Serenity. Back, and we the Down in Front podcast. I have Brylan, I have Blewett with me. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are in our spoiler section. So if you have not seen the movie Serenity, we will be spoiling this movie for you. Directed by Stephen Knight, writer, was also Stephen Knight. It was written by, there we go. Starring Matthew McConaughey and Hathaway, Diane Lane coming out of nowhere, left field, looking gorgeous as always.
You know who was supposed to be? That was supposed to be Uma Thurman, talking about other left field choices.
Oh, no.
Yeah, right?
That wouldn't have worked.
I mean,
things working in this movie is
to be fair.
Before we get into that, we do want to talk about a couple of sections. So, as always, we usually talk about the acting and the characters, but we're also going to keep it a little bit more of a kind of roundtable, kind of open discussion because some of the things do blend in together. So, as a whole, we'll be talking about acting and the characters, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the plot and story, but you also will kind of hear that also. So, without further ado, I'm going to toss it over to the mouth of the South. And Brylan, talk to me about this movie.
Yeah, so I want to start with just like some of the character work that we have in this movie. And I'll start with Matthew McConaughey, but oh, wow. I'll say this, that every action that McConaughey's character has in this movie, they call him John, or he goes by the name, what was it, like Billy Dennis or something like that?
Baker
Dill.
Baker Dill.
That's not a name.
I feel like someone came up to McConaughey and said, "Hey, do you want an easy paycheck?" And he's like, "Show me the script." He's like, "Good enough." And he signed on, and he just asked him, "Can I just do my thing and y'all just start filming?" And I feel like that's kind of what we get, is Matthew McConaughey is just making the movie he thinks is in his head this whole time. But maybe he's doing it on purpose too, because I'll get into this character a little bit later, but the whole idea of this movie is that the world we're actually going through with all this intrigue and suspense thriller and all this adultery going on and everything is a video game being made by a kid. And so it makes you decide whether or not, okay, is McConaughey doing this because he knows it's a bad movie, wants to ham it up, or is this actually the purpose of his character to act kind of this way? But he does some weird, crazy things. First of all, I mean, he's naked half the time in the movie, so there's just tons of McConaughey butt shots. He's just walking off cliffs into an ocean, diving in, and then swimming around and seeing his son underneath the water and trying to swim to him, but he can't. He's holding a knife up to some guys that rented out his fishing boat to catch tuna and stuff, and it's like he just freaks out on them for no reason. And then he's drinking rum like 24/7 in this movie too, and he's just constantly just berating people and just talking to people that like they're the scum of the earth. The way he like treats Duke, who's played by Jaimin Hansu, is terrible. I mean, it's like he says like he's bad luck every time he takes him on the boat because he never catches like his white whale every time he's on the boat. But then he also blames it on the death of Duke's wife, why he's bad luck, which makes no sense. Comes out of left field. It's has nothing to do with why he's upset, but it's a weird way to take the movie and like treat those characters as well.
Bryland, first of all, so I think that literally that they dropped Matthew McConaughey on an island with a whole bunch of peyote, and then he just smoked it for a weekend, and then they filmed it, which is why he's naked for the entire time, and they just kind of edited in the rest of the film. Like they shot some stuff with Anne Hathaway, and they shot the little, the little kid. Almost said they shot the little kid. That didn't happen that we know of. Everyone else, they just kind of like filled in the pieces to make it somewhat coherent. And this is all just like literally a fever dream. I will say this though, in defense of the movie, it almost feels like the dialogue is like what a bunch of NPCs from a video game would sound like if they started talking. Like how many like town squares have you been pulled into, and you're like,
oh, traveler.
Yeah, and I'm going to buy some stuff. And it's just like, have you heard about the wares? And, Khajiit and stuff.
Khajiit and stuff.
But they also just tell you arbitrary stuff that either happened in the video game past or will happen in the future, and gives you like quests to go on. So it almost seems like someone was programming this in, and there's no playable character. It's not like he's playing. Yeah. It's a simulation. It's not really a video game, and it just seems like that's how it's been constructed, and that's why nothing makes sense.
But I think the other thing that I thought was kind of curious, because I was getting some real weird hints and vibes from Matthew McConaughey's character from Interstellar and Matthew McConaughey's character in this movie, Serenity. It looks like he was kind of placed. He was the outsider, quote unquote. It seemed like he was the outsider, kind of, but definitely out of his element a little bit. And kind of once he started figuring out what's happening here, nobody else seems to want to believe him. So I don't know if anybody else kind of picked up a couple of those parallels. But the thing that I also thought was kind of weird was it seemed as though he was the only person, although he was a program, but it seems like he had his memories from when his son made him. So he was the only person aware besides another character by Reed Miller, unless everybody was programmed not to want to meet their creator. So I think already the story, there was way too much stuff happening for right now for anybody to have any realistic character development. And so I felt like everybody was like, what, I'm just going to do my best from what I know. And nobody tended to talk to each other. They just did their best from what they know on the actual screen.
Go ahead.
All right. I mean, with McConaughey, it just seemed like his character just kept on devolving incoherently and not making less and less sense as it went on. So, like after the scene where he has sex with Anne Hathaway, and he gets up, he says, "I win," and then starts this mumbling to the sky out in the back of his boat, and you're just like, what the hell is going on with this guy? It's just so weird. And there's they have one throwaway moment where he is swimming in the ocean, and then you hear this whispered voice talking about machine learning and genetic algorithms and artificial intelligence. And that's the only sliver of what makes his character a little different than the others, that it becomes self-aware compared to the rest of them that seem to be adhering to whatever coding they were given. But also the simulation just kind of doesn't make sense. And I want to definitely dive into that a bit more when we talk about the plot. Well, did you want to talk about something about McConaughey again?
I did want to elaborate a little bit on that point where split the characters. So I don't think necessarily McConaughey was new more, quote unquote. Think about it as character classes. So take Fallout 4, for example. When you pair up with McCready, he has more to his character. There is more filled in. That's the developers wrote more lines for him. and he reacts differently depending on what you do more through the game. I think that's what McConaughey's character is. Essentially, he's a sidekick that you pick up along the way that has more development time put into his background versus the other characters, which are NPCs, which only basically do one function. You know, what is it? Is it Constance?
Mm-hmm.
That only sells fishing supplies, or the bartender who does nothing else but serve drinks and say you're sick, you should go to Dr. Bob. Which send a sip to Dr. Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
No.
Fair enough.
Fuck Dr. Bob.
But it's cool they referenced him in this. I mean, if Dr. Bob just popped up at the very end, I'd be like, fine, that makes more sense than anything else.
But
Guys, there was a poll that came. He is the least liked character on that podcast. That's what we're talking about, right?
dang.
So I guess we'll agree that McConaughey was actually doing Jet this whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's other characters in this movie. So Anne Hathaway, wow, as soon as she gets on the screen, it's just like kind of same odd feeling that she's this program of this kid's mom that just comes off as a bad Jessica Rabbit. And that's weird to say that she's trying to be like this sultry, like 40s era femme fatale damsel in distress, but also doing it in the worst way possible. And her whole motivation to say, I'm going to pay my ex-husband $10 million to kill my current husband. But it's like, it's okay. You don't have to get back together with me. Just get this guy out of my life. And I'll give you this. It's kind of like, I'll give you our son and I'm going to run away forever. It's such a weird way. And I'm like, I was thinking of the whole time is like, if you're making a game like this or running a simulation like this, why would you program your mom to be like this? It was so creepy and weird.
I didn't get why she was hot. That was weird.
But I think he just programmed his mom for what she looks like in real life. I like Blewett, I like your sort of rationale here. It's not making this movie any better, but it definitely it makes a bit more sense of why. I think, and you said it yourself, Brylan. I think some of these weak character moments and motivations are lacking. Like a lot of this stuff with a lot of these other side characters that we will talk about, or lack of side characters. Basically, everybody else except Matthew McConaughey, what I'm saying. Everybody else except Matthew McConaughey have seen very watered down, unmotivated, and didn't really make a lot of sense. But going off of Blewett's point, it definitely does make sense if they're not the main character of this video game, this story. Right? They're not the protagonist of it. They're only going to do things that either aid or disrupt what the protagonist is trying to do. And it could just be, oh, hey, you should have another drink, or you should just do this. And it just feels kind of weak. I really wish, though, that we don't know. I mean, I'm only speculating, as Blewett is. I think I'm only speculating. It definitely makes more sense of why it was kind of constructed that way. I just wish they gave us a bit more. I know we'll talk about in the story that reasoning.
Can anyone tell me what the lyrics to Heart-Shaped Box mean?
Isn't that you give your love away or something like that?
No, it's a Nirvana song. So essentially what we have here, this game or simulation, or whatever we want to call it, being created by this kid, is his escapism. And it kind of follows your classic thing where like he is coding this video game and creating these characters as an outlet. So it makes sense that he pours a lot into Matthew McConaughey because it's the lost father he never had. He's trying to reconnect with his father. He's trying to get to like the best sides of him, the sides that, he was a war hero. He never died.
Drinking a lot of rum.
He was a war hero. He did manly things. He worked with his hands. They even say the Charlie Kelly's uncle line of like how big his hands were. The fisherman. So this is a lost boy that is trying to understand the world around him through an artistic endeavor. I mean, it's realistically no different than a scared Kurt Cobain writing about, I think that song was about abortion. And about,
I thought the song was about fatherhood.
yeah, it's wrapped in, and it's around the same time that Francis Bean was born, you know? And so here's this scared person. What was he? He died at 27, so he must have been 25 at the time. Here's someone who's scared and still somewhat childish, who's trying to understand the world around him, and that's what we see in this movie. Now, to me, I think they wrapped it up too nice. I hated that end scene, which I think we could talk into more, but it totally made sense where this person's just trying to cope with everything, and that's why everything feels weird. Like, Anne Hathaway is like a very sterile character. You know, they had that scene where it says, oh, she got beaten and she didn't even scream. Because that in his head, that's what his mom's going through. Where obviously this is a repeat thing. She's never gone to the police. She's never screamed for help, you know? And she's like basically a robot in that. I feel like I'm reading into this more than I am. I'm liking where I'm going with this, but at the same time, like it does make sense when you look at it from someone who's trying to cope with trauma, and how most of the time that turns out to some sort of artistic endeavor. I'll also say this, that they did this very real life, and that most people on this planet that are dealing with trauma are not Kurt Cobain. They're not dealing with it in ways that millions of people enjoy.
But I think you're reading into a lot of things, and you're filling in a lot of gaps and holes that this movie definitely left. You've been sitting there wondering and saying, oh, I'm now putting my own intellect and my spin on this movie. But they didn't show us that. I think you, Blue It, have to take that off just for a moment and see what was given to us. We've lived with Matthew McConaughey's character, but we don't know why. We don't know these reasonings. We don't know who this kid Patrick is. We don't get any of that until over an hour and 35 minutes into the movie. So we're living in this movie for over 90 minutes. We have no fucking idea what's happening. So I get what you're saying, but
it's a twist, though.
It's a twist. It's not, though. I get what you're saying.
Oh, it totally is a twist.
I mean,
I don't think it's a twist at all.
Understandable what this plot is about. It's just done terribly.
I mean,
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I like where this was going. Like, I like the story. I like at least what they were trying to do. I just think it was executed very, very poorly. And I think also the casting. Everybody need to be recast in this movie.
Except
everybody.
For McConaughey, and I even liked Hathaway.
No.
Jeremy Strong was perfect. Is that dweeb?
Iron's not in this movie.
No, which Jeremy was it? Strong,
Jeremy
right? Yeah.
Who was that?
The businessman.
Oh, okay.
Although I kept on thinking that was David Wayne the whole time. There's a clip of David Wayne in Stella where he's standing inside the rain, yeah. And that's all I could see was just when he was under the rain, just.
But I mean, going back to our characters, that was a huge tangent. Yeah. Going back to our characters now, I at least appreciated what the movie was trying to do. It definitely was at least engaging character-wise. I was curious to learn a bit more about these people, or not people, whatever, NPCs, whatever you want to name them. I was curious to learn a bit more about them. I think that fell flat very, very quickly because we didn't get, I couldn't buy into the payoff. I was also kind of filling in a couple of these gaps too, Blew It, of like, oh, is this like about time travel again? Or like, what is the mystery? What's happening here? How can he hear his son? What sort of weird connection? Is Reed Miller his son in the future time? That's where he kind of understood it. So I was plugging in a lot of things to see, oh, maybe this movie's a little more interesting than it is. It wasn't. So I was kind of bummed about that.
Yeah, I mean, one of those characters that don't really develop at all is Jason Clarke's character, who's Anne Hathaway's husband. He's just really skeezy as fuck in this movie, and it's just like every scene he's in, he's just like that, I guess, early 90s, like, take on the like abusive spouse that you would see in every like suspense thriller that came out in the 90s, and he just cranks it to 11. So like just going around, and his whole opening scene where he's just drinking and tells Anne Hathaway to take off the robe, and he sees a scratch on her. He's like, what is this? And then he immediately decides to whip her with a belt because she has a scratch on her. Why? Who the fuck knows? It's just like, oh, this is what abusive spouses do. They find excuses to beat people, even if it's just something very minuscule as a scratch. And it's just so weird that the whole like dynamic between Jason Clarke and Anne Hathaway just never really works, because we get the sense that she's been abused for about a decade, so she's like kind of in this point where she's used to it, but she knows like she's got to get out of it some way and like because of the programming, she decides that going to her ex-husband and paying him $10 million is the only way to do it, which is weird as hell. And
no, it's the dad. So you have to think about this from the kid's point of view. The war hero dad.
Yeah, and
she
the more
wants
I
to
put
go
myself
to
in those shoes, it's just bad. It just doesn't play well. And I mean the whole thing with Jason Clarke, I mean, he becomes almost like comic relief at the end, because once he's beaten by the Argentinian thugs that come out of nowhere.
Oh my gosh.
That when he's broken up and everything, they're just like pumping him full of rum, and he's standing there, he's like, oh, I'm gonna catch a fish, and then they link him to a fish, and there he goes, he's right in the ocean after that fish takes him in. It is just like a poor portrayal of something that, when you're dealing with that subject matter, I think audiences today expect it to be handled with more depth and care than it was in this movie.
It kind of unraveled in front of us, and that's why I felt like they started writing this movie and said, nah, fuck it, we're good. We're just going to end this how we want it, like, whatever, let's end it some easy way, and let's tack on a weird, what's that name of that movie that Johnny Depp was like a random computer?
Isn't it?
Transcendence or something like that?
Transcendence, yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that. And I was just like, what? It was a bummer, though, because I feel like they had some interest. Like, there was at least some building blocks for some of these characters and an interesting story at some point. It hit a point, and then it just kind of fell off.
Well, I got a super Shutter Island type feel in the middle when he was trying to figure out, like, the world around him. Yeah, I don't know. I still kind of liked it. I thought it was kind of interesting where the business salesman was like, oh, that was 20 seconds behind, when, like, you know, if you test runtime on, let's say, an application, you know, one of the big metrics is, at least on like web dev or any sort of like database management software, is runtime, you know, and you want your subroutine, in this case, the fisherman, to be working at an optimal rate. Yeah, no, but it's seriously, you know, like that. You have that character who's the quote unquote rules, which is just strictly computer code. They said it perfectly. The lighthouse, it's a binary on off. And so if your program's not working correctly, runtime is one of the first things that you could look for. Yeah,
but that character also by Reed Miller was just problematic.
That to this movie,
yeah,
because this movie doesn't deserve
you can't, you just can't do it, because that character
I could do it all. I'm Captain America on defending this movie right now, because I could do this all day.
Yeah, feel free, but like that character was also problematic in his own.
For what? I liked that character.
I mean, I didn't mind the character, but he was problematic from the rest of the movie, because he came in, and the one thing that he wasn't supposed to do, he ended up doing, was disrupting the protagonist to then break out of his shell of basically going against his own code.
Yeah, that one didn't make sense to me.
So I get what you're saying, but even in a video game, if a side character just basically pops up, deviates from what is actually was purpose, because his purpose was to give him that weird fishing thing so that he can find the big fish and catch it. Justice. There you go.
Fish finders aren't really weird, but
it
was a weird moment.
If the fish being called Justice was like, bitch, please stop it.
That was stupid.
The fish called Justice was dumb.
And I would liken that more towards a moderator bot rather than an NPC. So that was a representative of like some back-end programming that was going in and cleaning up certain things. He wasn't a real character.
But I can't even say that because a moderator bot would still put you back online before he even showed up the second time when they were talking on the beach drinking rum, which was a weird flash forward sequence of him tossing the bottle in the actual ocean. Also didn't make any sense. He then also talked to Matthew McConaughey about, oh, wait, your primary objective is to get justice. Getting justice is now killing a man. So what this moderator has already told him to do is change the entire code of the video game, which shouldn't happen.
Yeah, that happens all the time in games.
No, it shouldn't happen because the moderator didn't change it. Something else made Matthew McConaughey to change it, and thus you would think the moderator want to get him back on the initial plan of the fish finder, but then he just kind of abandoned that and said, oh, I guess the goal is to then kill this man. Then why doesn't the rest of the video game support that entire directive? Because then they all should be helping him kill him if that's the main objective, but it wasn't. The rest of the game was still focused on him finding the fish and catching the fish.
You're not wrong there. You're not wrong there.
Story's a mess. And so however you want to kind of boil it down, there's no way you could tell me that that's a good character. I was like, no.
It's a fine character. I mean, this movie was a mess. I'm just trying to rationalize where it was coming from. This movie made us sit through almost 2 hours of watching a man go fishing for tuna. Like, that in itself is kind of a modern miracle that we paid money to go watch a dude go look for tuna for 2 hours.
In the fact that he fished for swordfish and get all this money for fishing at night randomly.
Stable jobs and stuff.
But like he gets $800, and I think they talked about the fact that it's pretty cheap to live on that island. And it was like cents to get like tackle and wire, and fuel was the most expensive. And he get like $800 in a row, so he had $1,600 in a span of a couple of days. I'm like, where's all this money going? Like,
he's trying to do the in-game raid, and he's just too lazy to do his dailies. But when he does his dailies, finally, he gets his gear score up. So.
I mean, just get those dailies, bro. That's what they're there for. Like,
gotta grind a little bit. Gotta grind.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah. I mean, just some of the other characters I wanted to just mention briefly, like Jaimin Hansu is totally wasted in this movie. Not only is he like just totally shat on as a character, his character just totally doesn't make sense. Where he's helps Matthew McConaughey with the boat. He also looks like he's a preacher or a minister on the island as well. But also at the same time, he's a minister that's willing to hire thugs to take out the temptations in Matthew McConaughey's life. And and the logic behind where he goes doesn't make sense. And that's like kind of this whole breaking point with the whole idea of this being all in a game is none of the motivations make sense. You should have some logic and like start to see like the logic points in the actions of the characters, but it never happens. It's just random chaos, which is happening on this island and with these people. And the last character I'd mention is the kid. I mean, he doesn't really talk in this movie or anything, except I think he calls for his dad a couple of times. But he's kind of the actual plot of this movie. And so I just wanted to mention him here because even though he's not really acting in here, we see some shots of him staring at a screen, typing away, grabbing that knife. So the whole end scene where they cut to between the boat trip where Jason Clarke finally dies and him grabbing the knife and going and killing his actual stepfather. I guess the kid did a good job. I don't know. I mean, the kid wasn't really there for anything besides that, and that's kind of unfortunate because it's a subject matter that could have probably been handled better, because I'm sure there are people out there that when it comes to things like broken homes and frustrations and how does someone deal with those frustrations and finding those outlets to escape from a hard reality that you have, that this is kind of just throwing it in their face.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious about the message that was kind of lasted there. And as I said, we're going to be bouncing around a little bit, talking about plot and story and the characters. The thing that really kind of frustrated me was that ending component. And I know I'm going to give you a chance to talk Bluid, but usually in these movies, and they keep calling this a noir thriller, that the director, the actors, they at least kind of know that there's some sort of message that you're trying to send. I can care less of when you're making a movie, TV show, video game. There's always some sort of message. You put the words on the paper, especially if you wrote a movie. And what exactly are you trying to accomplish here? I was really concerned that the gratification for what Stephen Knight put into this movie was a little kid who was no more than 15, 14 years old. Yeah. The big sort of draw is that he actually kills his stepfather because he was beaten on his mother. And that is like, he's good. He's good to go. There's no downside. Then he rewrites the video game and runs away to happiness to see Matthew McConaughey. And I'm like, there's some shit that we need to talk about here. Like, what I'm curious about what was his overall sort of goal, his objective, or what was the message that he was trying to send there? Was it about Anne Hathaway's character? Because early on we were at least we had like we had a narrator that was untrustworthy, right? I thought Anne Hathaway left Matthew McConaughey, but spoiler alert, he died, which I saw that coming a mile away.
It's the big bullet hole in his chest.
I saw that. I was
dead
like, oh,
giveaway.
I think, nice. I think I think that was really easy, but it was weird because we thought Anne Hathaway was a bad mother and a bad character because the way that Matthew McConaughey was talking about her and kind of alluding to her. But now knowing that he died and she remarried and got into that whole bad scenario, it also doesn't make any sense, the dialogue that comes up when she says, "Oh, you were right. You were right the entire time about dating somebody who's beaten them when they looks like they were together since high school until he went off to the war." So it's just weird. There's just a lot of things that was put into this movie that I hesitate.
She didn't say that. About it. She didn't say that. The kid says that. The kid is vindicating his father's opinions on how his mom is,
Yeah, but how would he know? Because he wasn't even around at that time.
I know, but that's how he's writing the character. He's writing her to be like, you were right, I shouldn't have dated this guy because he beats me. And now you have to save me. In a way, it's saying that the kid was right, Also, I'll say this. The stupid happy ending was like the worst part, in my opinion, about this movie. Again, this movie was not good in any stretch of the imagination. I'm defending it far more than I should. But that scene was particularly terrible. I will say this, Warren, though. They did juxtapose, well, two things. First of all, there's no real character development because there's no characters except for the kid. There's only plot development. And what we're really seeing is the devolution of someone who goes from a simple coping mechanism to kind of fulfilling that. My girlfriend's been watching way too many of these serial killer things that we all know. They go from, pinching themselves to killing cats to killing human beings. It's like, there's a natural kind of like way that not natural, but this is an outlier cause, but this is something that as a pattern behavior in a lot of these people, that it goes from something simple all the way through an escalation. So what we're seeing McConaughey's character is the programming is quote unquote changing because the character programming those characters is changing with it. And that's where we get the big rule change that like, there's literally a separation of like, hey, before this rule change, I'm just going to code my game. I'm just going to sit in here. I'm going to escape. I'm going to go for that fish. It's a pure escapism. And then all of a sudden, it's, no, this is too far. I need to make a real change. I need to break the rules of my own reality-based, quote unquote game. I'm going to kill this mofo. The other thing is,
it's an amazing change, especially after they killed Jason Clarke. McConaughey's like scream into the air.
Yeah. My gosh.
The other thing is that he didn't come out quite scot-free because he was definitely like, he got charged with second-degree murder. He was, he's probably going away to some sort of detention center, but...
Or I was about to say sanitation home.
Yeah, I know.
That's sanitarium.
But not as a minor. He's like, what, 13 years old?
Yeah.
I mean, they put him in some type of psychiatric
Yeah.
ward.
I mean, that's
Did
where
they?
that's where yeah, that's
Because
where
we
he's-
have-
No, they
Because we
released
have
him to
no
his
idea.
mother.
Yeah, we have no idea.
No,
this
he
movie
was
stuff.
in a psychiatric ward. They had him in the plane room.
I mean, that's
with,
where we last see him, but they mentioned that he
Yeah.
was released into the care of his mother.
So we don't really
So
know.
he kind of
but-
gets what he wants.
Yeah, he totally got what he wants. He killed the dude.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I kind of on the okay side of this. I sometimes like it when movies don't really say what happens next, where it gives you a little bit of the open-ended possibility. Like, I sometimes hate when it's just like, oh, this was resolved with a nice bow.
Well, because it's more realistic that way when you leave it open ended. Because life is not black and white; it's all a bunch of gray with the
Right.
spattering a million other colors in between. It's just weird that they chose to wrap it up with a nice bow when the entire rest of this movie was super vague and we weren't entirely sure what's real and what's not. And at the end, they're like, okay, we're good here. Bye. And so I just think it's kind of, that's another reason why I think, and I said this a couple of times, it feels like there's a couple of cuts and there's a couple of iterations to this movie, and there's probably more than one script. And it feels like they were like, well, we're just kind of like, let's piece this together and see if it works. And I don't think it did.
Yeah. I mean, like, this movie is totally baffling of, like, its whole plot and everything. And I just wonder what they were smoking about in
Peyote.
this.
Peyote. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
we've-
peyote.
I don't know how many
Or-
times I can say
Or
this.
ayahuasca.
Yeah, salvia.
Something crazy. They were on all of the things.
What's the
that you
legal
can
one?
smoke.
Spice.
The spice. Hey, that movie's coming out. We should talk about
I
that
can't
later.
wait. That'd be awesome.
I need to go-
But yeah, like this whole, I mean, I can get behind an idea like a movie where we follow these characters, all of a sudden we realize everybody's just characters in a video game. Neat concept, but man, they take a roundabout way to getting there in this movie. I mean, you've ultimately figured out when the kid is the coder and creating all this that, okay, McConaughey's character is kind of an AI that has become self-aware and understands that he's in a game, and it's more of communicating with his son than anything. And it's like, is he his dad or anything? And where I felt like they should have just kind of leaned into that craziness a little bit more and just never answered that if it was actually a video game or not. I thought that would have been more interesting, because this whole idea, like every once in a while you have like this kind of erotic adult suspense thriller, then all of a sudden you have these moments where Matthew McConaughey just randomly sees his son while he's swimming in the ocean, or he has a dream and he wakes up at his table and the table's wet and he makes this circle and his son makes the same circle on his desk.
Yo, that didn't make any sense though.
It didn't make any sense at all. But if you had a movie with just like went like with the normal like suspense thriller plot, and then you just had these random things in between, they could have really taken like a very David Lynch approach to it and just left it very ambiguous, which I think would have made it a lot better. But I think that this movie just kind of looks and plays like one of these movies you would actually see the trailer for on Entourage. This is the actual movie that comes out of those movie trailers. And so that's what we actually watched. But I would say that like probably the most clever plot point is they actually wrote the sheriff off of the island as being on vacation. So, so you can actually kill somebody and get away with it scot-free, and nobody's none the wiser, and it's actually totally justified and everything. Because ultimately this plot is all about this kid is simulating this game or playing this video game, making this video game that he needs to justify to himself these feelings he has towards his stepfather to decide whether or not to kill him or not. And when he has it play out in that virtual world, that's it. It's like, okay, this is the point of no return for this kid, which could have been very interesting plot points to follow, where even though they have it wrapped in this weird suspense thriller, why can't they lean into something like abusive households and mental illness and those feelings of how do you handle that frustration and that that lack of hope in your life to come out of something, a very bad situation, to a better place. And it just falls flat on its face when it tries to do this, because it's kind of like this movie doesn't really understand what it wants to be or what it is. So it feels like they just tacked on this whole video game thing to say, okay, we got a whole mess of a movie here. How do we make it make sense? Oh, I know. Let's put a video game plot into it.
It just doesn't, man, it's a lot of it just doesn't make a lot of sense, which is unfortunate, but.
Yeah. I mean, why would the kid code his mom to be like a terrible porn actress?
I don't think she's a porn actress. Hold on. Hold on now. She didn't even say that. I mean, well, she said she had a lot of lines, but
maybe it was the whole daddy stuff on the boat. So
yeah, that was kind of weird.
Yeah. But I know that what she was trying to get to is like make sure that Jason Clarke character is kind of blindsided by what's about to happen to him.
Blow it. What you got?
Oh, what are we talking about again?
All of it.
This thing.
Just all of it.
I would just like to say that the kid needed to pick a style and go with it. Plymouth, the island, was it seemed like a Caribbean island that they spoke French but drove on the left side of the road, making
right side.
It was English. Like they took after the UK, but they spoke French. And there was like no.
They drove on the right side of the vehicles.
Yes. And then there was also cornfields. Like that one road looked like Kansas, you know, or wherever America grows corn. I don't really know or care.
Yeah, I thought they were in Maine for most of the time for some reason.
It was he just needs to pick a geographic location, maybe Wikipedia about that location, and then do a little bit better there. His world design was crappy, is what I'm saying.
I love the moment where Matthew McConaughey's character Baker Dill is getting the maps out. He's getting larger and larger maps, and he's like,
he got the world map out.
He's just like putting stuff in. He sticks a knife in one. He like puts a bottle of rum on the other edge. I'm like, you didn't need to do that. You can already tell that that's all going to be the same map, right? I chuckled. I chuckled at that part. I'm like, that's hilarious. I had a good time at that part.
Oh, dude, I laughed out loud several times during this movie.
Oh, yeah.
When before we knew what was going on. So I warned this. I had literally no idea what this movie was about. I just knew that we had to watch it to do this podcast, and so I did. When we see Mr. Irons take his shoes off and then wade into the water, and it was just like, apparently that's a character. And then we don't see him again for 25 minutes. We're like, what was that?
Mr. Strong, not Mr. Irons.
Oh, Strong, whatever.
You're just confused the shit out of everybody right now. Jeremy Irons is not in this movie.
Irons kind of strong, so.
Fair enough. Yeah, I thought that was also going to be something a bit more impactful, that he shows up late, he finally shows up early at the right time, all to just give him this weird fish finder, but not really. It's just kind of weird. I also wanted to see who the heck Dr. Bob was, because I thought for sure that Dr. Bob was going to be his kid. I was also putting a lot of weird theories on there too, but I'm like, who is this Dr. Bob? If people are telling you to go to this, is that how they get their memory wiped, or is that they're deleted? Was Duke this other person that's already been reformatted a couple of times, like maybe
Dr.
some
Bob
other stuff?
Trash can.
Yeah, I that was a huge miss for me too. Is I really wanted to see him, because they built him up over half the movie is like,
or her.
Yeah, that's true. Him or her. But let's elaborate. The fact that they were missing the doctor almost goes back to the neglect that the parents had towards the child, in which case a good therapist could have resolved the situation without murder.
How?
Metaphors. Boom.
No.
Totally. We never saw the doctor. The kid never saw the doctor. Unhinged mental disorder ends in murder.
How do we know the kids never saw the doctor?
Well, it's implied. Because I said so.
That's not. No, shut up. You're just putting in things that you think could work in this movie. No,
he never saw the doctor and he killed that guy. I'm saying child neglect was a huge part of it, and not getting your kid adequate medical care, including vaccinations. Yes, we're going there. Including that inadequate medical care towards your children is a form of child neglect.
I would love if that was a thing that the director was trying to go for in this movie.
Dude, I should write a companion piece that goes with this, and then have everyone we'll do it in waves. Like, people that have seen this movie chime in. If you've never seen this movie and you're listening to this podcast, we just ruined it for you. If you see this podcast, you're like, I'm thinking about checking that out. Have your friends that also listen to this tell you to talk to me. I'll write up my synopsis. You read that and then go see the movie and see what you think about it.
That explanation made almost as much sense as this movie.
Well, it's because I've been smoking peyote for the last time.
Just getting ready for the Super Bowl. I'm just going to smoke peyote for 3 weeks straight. Why not? All right. What else do we have to talk about? You want to bring up about this movie here?
I mean, Diane Lane's character, I guess, if like the others are like classes, I guess she's a vendor.
No, she's a quest
offers
giver.
Sex for money or money for sex.
No, she got to catch the kitty, which is the worst metaphor I've heard.
Like, yeah, the whole taming the kitty thing. And how does the cat like walk from one island to another? And everybody's still like, oh, cat, you got to go back home. It'll take you 8 hours, but you got to go back home.
It's one island.
It's one island, but it's also not real. I like the fact that there was these weird. I like the fact that they did mention that there was these weird kind of tasks and games that was always being littered in to help distract him from his actual goal. And I mean, like any other, again, video game, I was like, oh, I think that's pretty interesting. That's pretty cool. Yeah. But maybe like 1 or 2 lines that was okay.
Yeah, it was just weird because like kind of part of me wants this to be like this neat exploration of artificial intelligence where Matthew McConaughey is self-aware. Oh, and also the whole explanation behind why he chose the name is just the most absurd shit ever.
Serenity or Justice?
No, his Baker Dill or Baker Dill. Or, like that whole conversation where it's like, I know like you chose that because of your mathematics professor was your favorite professor in college and his name was Dylan Baker. And like, no, don't try to define that. That's terrible. Just consider it a fake name and keep on passing. You don't need a conversation.
That was wasted dialogue. I would just like to think that Diane Lane got so bummed out from doing Batman versus Superman that she's just like, sure, it's got to be a better script than this. Also, I will say this, Rollins. To respond immediately to that, the whole thing about the AI coming self-aware, I think that's been overdone. I actually do respect. No, Westworld, like that totally was that. I mean
Westworld does it beautifully too.
Right. So. You could even make it.
Alert.
Yeah, that's right.
AIs are in Westworld. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, Westworld, or what was that movie that I liked?
50 years old.
Yeah, right. They've already made a movie.
Replicas. AI.
Yeah.
AI becoming self-aware, guys. Yeah, I just said it.
It's one of those things that I actually I would applaud them for doing something different than just your stereotypical like what makes a human, quote unquote. Is it like the ability to you're not defining what humanity is. It's more of that case study of a broken home. Now, I'll agree with you guys that I think you had to really look for that theme to find it. But that was the central theme, not any sort of like AI shenanigans.
Yeah, I mean, like, what if the abusive stepdad was actually abusing him by writing a virus that was modeled after his wife and put into the game to disrupt the dad AI?
What?
Yeah.
I
mean, that's kind of like That's kind of the feeling I got, like where like Anne Hathaway's character was put in here to disrupt Baker Dill's life, like this life that he found and everything, even though he's struggling and everything in it, that she's here to just cause upheaval that he doesn't need. And so that could have been an interesting twist on it, is that her character is not part of the program, that she is a outside influence introduced into the software.
That would have been great.
That's the Matrix.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
What if?
But have you seen The Matrix as an erotic suspense thriller, though?
That's
also The Matrix.
What if Matthew McConaughey's character was the abusive father? And that's that bullet hole. But that bullet hole that we thought was in his chest was actually a knife stab wound.
Ah, interesting.
Well, that would have been an interesting take on it, where Matthew McConaughey is the abusive father, but he reprograms him as normal so that he can try and connect to his father. Yeah, that would have worked.
Would have been neat. Been a neat exploration.
I should be a movie director.
It's not what happened, but
I'm aware that's not what happened.
Bitch, you got to do acting first.
For you. The only other thing I wanted to mention is this score is just as dysfunctional as this movie. Like, this movie opens up where you're zooming into the kid's iris, then it opens up to the ocean, and you're getting like this almost like Miami Vice, like big drums, intense score happening at the beginning of the movie, and then when the camera pans up and you see two old drunk dudes on a fishing boat, and it's still going dun 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 dun, and you're like, what the hell is this? Is this like Jaws or something? It's like none of the music makes sense, and there's no pattern to it. It's weird that they keep jumping between like these super heavy like suspense sounds and then kind of like a live action Disney like feel good moment score as well. It just is all over the place. It's crazy.
Which is interesting because this composer worked on It, Blade Runner 2049, Dunkirk, and Hidden Figures.
So that's wild.
No, he worked on it. He was the main. No, I just said he worked on these actual scores, so he's known.
Oh, so he's not. He wasn't.
No, yeah.
I thought I was like, Dunkirk was amazing.
It's like Hans Zimmer. No.
But he got nominated for a Golden Globe, and he won another 5 more. So this guy knows what he's doing. He actually did the Hidden Figures, and he got nominated for Blade Runner because he also did Blade Runner that was shared with Hans Zimmer.
Benjamin Wolfish. Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
I think he phoned it in on this one.
I thought Blade Runner was Hans Zimmer. Oh.
Well, it looks like they shared that.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd say about that is they mentioned Miami a bunch, so I think it was also a bit of a red herring. I think that this island was close off of Miami, but Miami is where the kid lived. And so when they found the body in the water, right? Remember the police report at the end was with his stepfather's body in the water?
It was Miami. I forget exactly where it was.
I don't know. I took Miami as like Tahiti.
Trash.
No, Miami was the real place. Plymouth was some irrelevant data point.
Right.
Miami is where the kid actually lived.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I was saying the music. I can kind of get why it's a little bit more Miami. That's where the kid actually is. Yeah. That's the only. That's like the only.
He also. I'll defend this again with Warren, where there was a couple times where the guy was driving through like the cornfields, because tropical islands have cornfields, and they were playing like country music, and I was just like, dude, this is so weird. Like, why? That honestly, the first time I noticed that it was corn was because it was country music. I was like, why are they playing banjo guitars for like a tropical paradise island? Yeah. And then I looked, I'm like, why is there corn? Now, if you're a botanist and there's
the steering wheels on the right side of the truck.
Yeah. Well, some of those islands do, I assume, right? They're British controlled,
Yeah.
but yeah. So I think I could somewhat excuse it for some kid having terrible music placement.
Oh, you know what else movie had corn in it when he was driving really fast?
Interstellar.
Spoiler alert!
What's the connection?
I still haven't seen Interstellar, so
Fuck you.
Wonderful.
Fuck you, blew it.
Yeah, I only wish I could like drive down a street and just park in the middle of the street and everybody's cool with it. I would live on an island.
Oh, you could do that in the Midwest. That's A-okay.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was interesting though that it seems like some of this universe was kind of holding him back. Really, the only point when he was trying to get up before 5 a.m. and his body was like stuck. You remember that part?
That was cool.
He's trying to run a red light too.
Yeah, he couldn't do that, and I'm like, where?
Okay, where was this throughout the movie?
Yeah, maybe the kid was asleep, right? Like,
no.
I would love for them to kind of explore that. Well, maybe he literally wasn't kind of coding that, which doesn't make any sense, but whatever. Like, maybe there's some reason why this universe does stop him from doing certain things.
It's because code's code. You can't not do it.
But it was just messy because he did not catch that fish that he was supposed to the entire movie.
Code is the rules.
Yeah.
And we all know what we feel about ruse. Ruse is ruse.
Rules.
Getting a north.
I am the rules.
So let's move into our conclusion and our final wrapping up of this. Brylan, what would you tell people about this movie? Would you recommend it? And if you don't recommend it, what's a better movie that you would tell people to go watch in theaters right now?
Oh my gosh, this is a terrible bonkers as hell film. It's gonna be on a future episode of How Did This Get Made, most definitely. If I was gonna recommend this or Replicas, I'd have to say just go see Replicas because you can at least enjoy Keanuing everywhere.
I didn't say Replicas.
I
think Keanuing is stronger than McConaughey.
No way.
At this point.
No way.
I mean, even though you get more butt in this one, so some people might appreciate more butt.
Mocha will.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I didn't say Replicas. I just said another movie
that was in theaters at this time. Go see Glass again, or go see A Dog's Way Home.
No, we went to go see.
God.
We went to go see. Go
see Dragon Ball Super Broly.
Oh yeah, that's not on A-list. I was real upset about that. By the way, you gotta pay money for a movie.
You gotta make me pay money.
2018? Fuck out of here. Blew it. What would you tell people about this movie? Would you recommend it? If not, what's a better TV show that you would tell them to watch instead?
I really like this movie. Not in a good way, but just in a bad way. That being said, I don't know, nothing to live your life. Go watch the Super Bowl on Sunday. Hopefully America's team wins.
Yes.
The Dallas Cowboys aren't in it.
Oh, that's not been America's team for 40 years now.
The Patriots.
No, seriously, I probably would pass it too. It's not like, don't watch it on video when it's out. I feel like this is a good Netflix movie where you can just like scroll through your phone and just like chime in every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, although I can't tell everybody to watch this movie, it was pretty problematic, kind of all over the place. I just wouldn't want you to kind of waste your time. If you have 2 hours to spare, definitely go check out one of the 2 documentaries on Fire Festival because it is hilarious and you will definitely be you will be entertained for sure. Absolutely, for sure. So if you don't know anything about the Fire Festival or what Fire is, definitely go check it out. I would start with the Netflix one, and then go watch the Hulu, and then look up some of the information because I think that's going to be a bit better than what this movie kind of gave us. This movie made right under $5 million, but they did not post what their production budget was. I can only imagine they lost a lot of money.
Where's Ja?
Where's Ja? And with that, we or the Down in Front podcast. Thanks everybody for tuning in and kind of joining. Thank you so much, Blewett. Thank you much for Brylan for kind of hanging out on this lovely evening. Mouth of the South, Brylan, where can people find more of your work?
You can find me promoting my own version of a fish finder on Twitter at Bryland, Brilund. You can also find me posting many movie and TV reviews on Instagram at I am Bryland, trying to finish up some things so I can post up there hopefully very soon.
Shredder, what you got going on? Where can we find more of your work? And know that you have a show coming up?
Yeah, we do. I think first week of February. Might be the second, technically. I think it's the second weekend.
You're
2 weekends.
terrible.
2 weekends from now, I think. Somewhere.
Is Tom Brady going to be there?
Hopefully not. Hopefully he'll just be at home, mouth kissing his kids because he just doesn't.
Oh,
need to do anything.
jeez.
If you want to reach out to us, you can certainly reach out to us at My News Music, My News Band, at most major platforms. Also, check us out. We live stream sometimes. We live stream at Watch Jesse Smoke Peyote at Twitch TV. That is definitely a Twitch channel already.
Yeah, I was like, this could be. This could be. This movie was shot in Mauritius, which is Republic of Mauritius. It looks like it's near the Indian Ocean, by the way, but they primarily speak French.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But
I did love the drone shots in this. The CGI sucked on the fish, but the drone shots I really thought were cool. Very amateurist. But
it's
cool.
close. Yeah, it was shot at least in Africa, but there's only one black guy that we saw here. Who knows? Check out more of our work at downinfrontpodcast.com. We have our Twitter. We have our Patreon. I mean, we are just literally about everywhere, so I appreciate you so much. Check out our Twitter at _DAFP. Facebook is facebook.com/downinfrontpodcast. We're actually on Reddit, so if you do want to post on some Reddit, we do be posting a couple different things and start some conversations on there. We have a Discord channel too, so we post that information when we actually release the actual episode, just to have people kind of hang out with us and kind of chat with us more and more. We also going to be having our Patreon. So if you like what we're doing, you want to support us, patreon.com/soundinfrontpodcast. Anything and everything is great, is going to be helpful. So we appreciate it so much. Brylan, what is our next review?
Our next review will be decided very soon.
Oh, right. I remember that. Ugh.
So stay tuned, folks.
Yeah, I'm excited about the next review because hopefully it's going to be something good. It's going to be something good. Everybody, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Enjoy the evening and go Rams.
Don't listen to this guy. Good night.